This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
December 2018. The Hard-Traveling Fanboys are celebrating Aquaman Month.
Amen.
Place to Be Nation listeners, you are listening right now, as I speak, to the insides of Ho Ho Loon Plaza in beautiful and serene Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. You are listening to the longest running weekly episodic comic book podcast in all Place to Be Nation.
That's much better than the last time we attempted to do that, by the way.
Yes, which people can hear on the Looking Forward, Looking Back podcast, Nick, on which we both appeared.
We did, and we attempted to do our catchphrase, and it was, I would argue, it's the worst attempt at it we've ever made.
Yes, I would agree with that.
I blame northern aggression.
We actually get back to it, so...
Folks, we are crossing jokes about shitty southern internet speed with jokes about the Civil War. This is fun. Merry Christmas.
It is. Absolutely. Absolutely. I've always said, Nick, there's one thing that I've always said, and I think you know this to be true. The best jokes are the ones that you immediately explain afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Always. That's always been our preferred take on humor.
That's right. Well, speaking of humor, that's not really a good transition here. You are listening to an unprecedented, Nick, I believe, second consecutive episode of the Longbook Hunters. You see, usually once a month, we try to take you on a journey through a trade paperback or graphic novel collection and offer up a review of it. A lot of times these are books that we have read before. Sometimes, as is the case in today's episode, it's a book that we've never read before. Nonetheless, usually we have to space these out because I am a very slow reader. I don't know why I delivered that like Linda McMahon. That was a very slow reader. But nonetheless, we decided that since this is Aquaman Month, or Nick... AQUAMONTH, we decided, you know what? We are woefully inadequate when it comes to knowing the history of DC's King of the Sea, Aquaman. And with the big budget motion picture Aquaman set to hit theaters this weekend, we thought we better come back with yet another Longbook Hunters as we are getting a crash course over the last 2 weeks in the iconic 1990s run on Aquaman by writer Peter David, who also, as many know, is the namesake of the biennial Place to Be Nation Peter David Memorial Fantasy Comic Book Draft presented by a hypothetical, non-rotational DC Comics online unlimited subscription service.
Well done, sir.
Thank you very much. So last week we reviewed Aquaman Time and Tide, a 4-issue miniseries that kind of begat the iconic run of Peter David. And that miniseries is actually collected in the trade edition that we're reviewing tonight. What we're reviewing today is Aquaman by Peter David, Book 1. It's a book that I read through a combination of the DC Universe app and the Hoopla app, which I would recommend to those who have library cards. Nick and I were able to read this collection. It does include Time and Tide. We just skipped that part for this week and went right into the ongoing series, which launched in 1994. And one of the interesting things about this series, Nick, is that it intersected with a major DC event, which was 0 Hour Crisis in Time. And as a result, the numbering gets a little wonky in this collection.
It does indeed. As opposed to something like, if you remember DC Comics Zero Month during the New 52, which actually released an entire month of number zero issues that told stories that preceded the number ones that had been released a couple of years before. This one, Zero Year, used their number zero issues during the time of Zero Hour, but they essentially serve the same purpose as whatever the next number would have been. So the numbering for this series actually goes 1, 2, 0, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. So it's a little confusing, but luckily we had a trade that had it in the proper order to allow us to experience that as it should have been.
Yes, and that reading order is essential because this is a very linear story, unlike Time and Tide, which we reviewed last week, which was kind of snapshots from Arthur Curry's life, would you say, Nick? And this time we're getting into a proper, traditional, long-term comic book run. Of course, no one at the time realized how long this run would go. It would run over 70 issues, take us all the way up to the turn of the millennium. But here it is on the ground floor, and we are picking up many of the threads that were introduced in Time and Tide into the modern, ongoing continuity of DC Comics. Now, the artist for the majority of this is a guy named Martin Egeland. He is the guy that is for the most part taken point on the art duties here, but there are some interesting diversions. There's one issue done by Jim Caliafor. I apologize if I'm pronouncing his name wrong. Add it to the list, folks, of the comic book artist names that are a little difficult for me to pronounce at times. But and then we also see co-artists come on several of these issues. So it seems like perhaps Egeland was having a little bit of trouble matching the deadlines month to month, but I don't know that for a fact.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on either. Hard to say, really, being that this came out in 1994 when, I was all of 6 or 7 years old and you were all of, 10 or 11. Hard to know what the behind-the-scenes finaglings were on this.
Yes, indeed. And nonetheless, it's the vision is that of Peter David. This is his Aquaman. This is his take on this character, and it's different from really any take that I've ever encountered of Aquaman. We talked about that last week with Time and Tide, and that kind of continues here with a more rough around the edges, withered, beaten down by life's experiences version of Aquaman. And we get started in this series by a diversion into Aquaman and Aqualad looking into a sunken submarine, and it leads to a sequence of events that will really shape Aquaman for the rest of the 1990s and into the 2000s. So we in this very first issue, Nick, we get introduced to Aqualad. We are a reintroduced Aqualad, I suppose, for longtime readers, and kind of picking up the status quo of kind of a sad and disheveled Aquaman who's grown out a beard and long hair since we saw him last. What did you make of this first issue as kind of a table setter for the rest of the series? Yeah,
it's one of those instances where we've talked about this before. A lot of these series that we review, we tend to review volume, the first issues of particular volumes because we kind of are looking for a clean jumping on point. And this one, I think it's mostly okay as a jumping on point, but there are things that, us not having an in-depth knowledge of Aquaman's history is kind of causing something of an issue. We don't know what led to him departing Atlantis. We don't know what led to him losing the throne. We don't know what led to, my understanding is that, he and Mira were often portrayed being together. I'm assuming that the fallout from the death of their child, granted that was years earlier, but I'm assuming that had something to do with it. Basically, we don't know what led to this version of Aquaman being so grumpy and disheveled as we had talked about. We don't know why his relationship with Garth, with Aqualad, is in tatters seemingly, and they haven't seen each other in a while. So there's a lot of scene setting here that wasn't really done, and it's just kind of left to us to kind of figure it out along the way. And I think I got some of the pieces, but I don't think I got the full story or a full understanding by the end of the book. But I don't think it was necessarily a major roadblock to enjoying the story overall.
Right, I would agree with all that, and I think it's clear that this is very much a setting the table for years of storytelling, not just in the present day, but as we see later in this book, there are flashback sequences and throwback sequences that are to the status quo and some of the details of his life and what was going on. But one thing that I got instantly was a sense of character, and that's one of the things that we always talk about as being so vital in these beginnings of long runs, is you have to establish your characterization early on and be consistent with it. And I thought that in the very first issue of this book of Sea Life, we talked about this in Time and Tide, but our beloved sharks made an appearance again, Nick, in one of these issues.
The sharks, the dolphins, everybody popped up.
Yep, even Porm, Aquaman's dolphin mother. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we do not see Nira, his dolphin lover, in this issue.
No,
in this
we do not.
Volume, but
we do see.
Pop up
but we do see Dolphin, his human lover.
Yes, Porm the dolphin and Dolphin the human.
Yes.
So quite unique in its ways. We'll get to Dolphin in a moment. By the way, that's another conversation to be had. The usage of Aquaman is interesting here because he gets into a conflict with a brand new villain named, again, Nick, I'm going to need help with pronunciation. Is it Charybdis?
Your guess is as good as mine on that one. I'm going to take your word for it. Sure, let's go with Charybdis.
I took a mythology class, but I don't remember how to pronounce Charybdis. But I think that might be it, or Charybdis. I'm not sure, one or the other. Anyway, we're introduced to a new villain who looks a little bit, Nick, and maybe this was just me, a little bit like Namor. Yeah, that's a good comparison there. And to Peter David's credit, what looks like it's going to start out as a very generic evil villain who is attacking people in the deep sea ends up getting a little bit of a depth to him. No pun intended, since they're in the depths of the ocean. But he does get depth to him in terms of he has lost his lover, who is also a terrorist.
Kind of like a cross between Namor and Sinestro.
Nonetheless, there is an element of tragedy to his character, even though he could be a throwaway villain in many stories, and probably would be most of the time. I appreciated that touch, Nick, and appreciated adding a little bit of a personal touch to an otherwise rather unremarkable villain.
Yeah, he was. That little bit of flashback that we get is a decent attempt to at least provide him with an extra dimension, unlike a lot of villains of the 90s, I'll say. And I did think it was kind of. It wasn't. I don't think it was meant to be funny, but it was pretty funny when the villain that we thought was supposed to be his wife was revealed to just be somebody that he was forcing to pretend was his wife. That
was hilarious. I agree completely. I actually laughed when I read that scene because he's been paying not only, and I have to say, Nick, she's a pretty good actress.
Yeah, she did pretty well.
She's not just sitting there looking like his dead lover. She's actually delivering lines in the first issue, or the second issue rather, talking about how she delivers lines talking about we're going to destroy you and all that stuff, and get him Charybdis baby and stuff like that. So he did pretty good in hiring this actress, and it's a shame that she puts on probably the performance of her life and then gets murdered for it.
Yeah, it just goes to show you don't really try when you're acting. Just phone it in, and you'll be fine.
Absolutely. The worst thing you can do is be good at doing what you're doing, and then you get asked to do it over and over again. Mm-hmm. So that could really have been a problem for her if she had continued living. So perhaps the bullet to the face was actually in many ways a blessing in disguise for a young unnamed actress playing Scylla, the role of Scylla here. But yeah, so Aquaman and Garth, Aqualad, they get into hijinks with Charybdis, as I'll call him, and end up finding a character named Dolphin, who I guess let's just get into this, Nick. There's so many elements to explore here about Dolphin, would you say?
Yeah, I don't know who she is. She popped up in the Dan Abnett run recently during the Underworld storyline, and I understood that she was supposed to be somebody, a former character from Aquaman's past that was making her rebirth or New 52 debut, but I have no clue who she is and didn't take the time to Google it or do any sort of research, so I still don't know who she is.
I did a little bit of Google research last week on Dolphin, the character, just by accident as I was researching some of Aquaman's history. And Dolphin apparently came around sometime in the 60s and then went away for a long time and then came back. But one thing that I will say that this book did not do a good job of is giving me anything on Dolphin. She's really just a prop there for most of the book. Would you agree?
Yeah, they have her, she's kind of there. She basically saves Aquaman's ass at the end of the second issue, and then she pops up in a dream sequence in Zero, and then it's kind of his. And that's another part that was confusing is I think a couple times they make references to the fact that she is mute, or that people thought she was mute, but she speaks. And then I know that in the Dan Abnett run, which is my only other exposure to her, she is mute. So I'm not really sure what her status quo is as it relates to speaking, which sounds weird to say, but that seems to be an aspect of her character that's supposed to be pretty important. Yeah,
and here she's not mute, obviously. She gets lines and all that stuff. And the problem that I had is now this book was one other thing that we'll get to a little bit later is this book is very of the 90s. It's very 1994 in many ways, and we'll get to that in a moment. But she kind of shows up and they don't really ask anything about her history. They just let her tag along with them back to wherever they go, to Atlantis even. They don't ask a ton. She helps them out. She helps save their lives, both of them. But they don't ask her questions about her past. We don't find out anything about who she is in this continuity, if she's the same as the pre-crisis Dolphin or what's going on here. And I don't know if this was tied into another ongoing book. Couldn't tell you. But I found her presence at times off-putting and at times not off-putting. But it was a little odd that she swims around the entire time in a tied-off T-shirt and Daisy Dukes.
Yeah, which is pretty much her same costume in Rebirth as well. So I don't know, man. I don't know what her deal is. It's pretty clear that she and Aquaman have some sort of sexual tension going on between each other, but they never really
Garth is trying to get with her as well.
Well, Garth seemingly is trying to get with anyone that moves. He is he's very teenager in that respect.
Yes.
So. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what her deal was.
One of the funniest bits, by the way, and this is actually later on in the book, but one of the funniest bits to me was they're in the Aqua Cave, if you will, and Garth gets mad because Aquaman won't let him in and tell him what's going on. And so Garth says, "You know what? I got my own stuff to deal with. I'm going to go do it. And Dolphin, you should stay behind too." And she's like, "All right." And he goes, "Well, I mean, you can think about it if you." "No, I have. I'm staying with Aquaman." He just swims off and goes, "Fine." That was great. That's one thing that continues throughout this from Time and Tide is there are some clunky moments here and there with some of the one-liners that don't land, but for the most part, the dialogue here is great. Peter David's characterizations are at times funny, at times touching, at times serious. I really enjoyed the tone of this book, Nick. I enjoyed the usage of humor was appropriate when it was there, and some of it was really, really funny. The sharks that can't figure out how to get out of the net was amazing. And actually, I would say that my favorite bits of this book were the comedy bits. What were your thoughts on the dialogue in general, which I thought was mostly strong with some misses here and there, but also just the tone in general?
No, yeah, I would agree with that. In general, the dialogue, while it had its moments of weakness, I thought it was pretty strong, especially for a 1994 book, which oftentimes, you'll get titles that the dialogue comes off as very dated. This didn't. And like you said, it was important because you have to strike this counterbalance, because Peter David is trying to use this very grim and somewhat depressed version of Aquaman, but yet you have to kind of acknowledge a little bit of the goofiness inherent in the character. So you can't just tell this relentlessly dark and grim story. You have to have a little humor thrown in there from time to time. And I thought he did a good job.
Yeah, 100% agreed on that. The sprinkling in of the humor in the midst of a story where, spoiler alert, Aquaman loses his hand in the second issue. That surprised me, Nick, because I knew a lot about Aquaman having a hook hand from seeing the cartoons when I was younger, Justice League, Superman, etc. Also from reading crossover comics back then and Grant Morrison's JLA a little bit. But I never knew how he got the hook in the comics. I knew how he got it on the Justice League episode. but I never knew how he lost the hand in the comics, and I was actually shocked that it happened that early in Peter David's run.
Yeah, the end of the second issue, I believe. So that was interesting as well. But it makes sense. I think he wanted to do something drastic to shake up the status quo of Aquaman and something to distinguish him visually from previous incarnations. And yeah, you had the long hair and the beard, but this certainly further separated him from the more classic interpretations that we're familiar with.
Yeah, it is, by adding the hook attachment to his hand, it makes him look, okay, yes, it is sort of a 90s approach of, what if Aquaman had a hook hand? But, on the other hand, it does instantly make him look different than any other version of the character, and it sort of does in a physical way what we talked about Jeff Johns trying to do in a story way of kind of battling the traditional Aquaman jokes. So, like, when you see Aquaman, you see this is a dude that could kill someone if he wants to. He has a freaking hook for a hand, or a harpoon for a hand.
He says at one point he has no compulsion against killing.
Yes, absolutely. This is Aquaman who does not live by the morals and the code of the surface dwellers. So he is going to do what he's going to do by his code, not anybody else's. And we see that here with how he uses he fights a long time without using his harpoon attachment, and then finally he does. He stabs one of the deep six towards the end of the book.
Well, before that, when he's trying to put the moves on Dolphin, he accidentally slices her with the harpoon.
That's true. Well, I think she was putting the moves on him more than that. She was trying to seduce him fairly early in the book, it seems, because there's a line where somebody says, you and your lover may pass, and she goes, I am not Aquaman's lover. And then she has a thought bubble that says, not yet. So Dolphin
she's very clearly got something. She has intentions for that harpoon that we don't need to know.
Oh, that would be dangerous, though, Nick.
Well, we don't know. She may have powers that can, toughen up her skin. I don't know.
She may have what you refer to as good innards.
Good innards. Yes, that's true.
Now, speaking of that little thing, what is it with Arthur and dolphins? Like, in Time and Tide, he wants to have sex with a literal dolphin, and here finds himself drawn to a woman named Dolphin.
I don't know. I can't answer that question. I guess it's that fucked up childhood thing where, the Oedipus complex where they thought that, he thought the dolphin was his mother, so now he has a thing for dolphins the rest of his life. I don't know, man.
His mother was an undersea prostitute named Dolphin with webbed feet.
Porm, wasn't it? Porm?
Yeah, no, I was just riffing there. But yes, Porm is his mother, the dolphin, which we do see her again in this, which was kind of cool. That was a nice throwback to my favorite issue of of Time and Tide. So I appreciated seeing her pop up again. And another thing that I didn't even think about this until just now, Nick, this entire 9 issues that we're reviewing, not once do we see an appearance from one of or a real appearance, I should say, from one of the classic quote-unquote Aquaman villains of Black Manta or Ocean Master.
No, we don't. We have references to Ocean Master made during the back half of this volume that we reviewed when he returns to Alaska, and we see Black Manta in a dream sequence, a hallucination sequence in issue 0. But that's pretty much the only exposure we get to either of those characters.
Yeah, and I actually appreciate that. I think that's ballsy to do because we've talked in the past, it hasn't always worked. We've reviewed volumes where people start runs and they don't use the classic villains, and it kind of doesn't work. Like we just said that about the Avengers run. But in this case, I thought it worked with some of the original villains that he comes up with, and the usage of the Deep Six at the end, the crossover issues that we see here that we'll talk about in a minute. I actually thought this was an example of not going to the traditional well and it paying off.
I would tend to agree. I think the crossover issues suffered from not really having overly interesting antagonists, but as you mentioned, they had some guest appearances that kind of helped to shore up the overall narrative. I thought the first guy, who I've already forgotten the name of and won't attempt to pronounce anyway, was pretty interesting. And then, as you mentioned, you had the Deep Six and the elemental kind of angle to that one, and that was pretty decent. But I thought I think it was the 2-issue run in the middle that kind of focused on dolphins in captivity and featured guest appearances from both Superboy and Lobo. That was probably the weak point of the 8-9 issues for me.
Wow, that's interesting because those were my favorite issues of the 8. So let's talk about that.
It's time to admit something that I don't know that I've ever actually admitted. I hate the leather jacket version of Superboy. Loathe it.
Two 90s.
Two 90s. And as someone who didn't read during the 90s, it comes off as a bad stereotype of what comics were like in the 90s. Whereas Lobo is a good stereotype of what things were like in the 90s.
So let's talk about that. There is they make quick use of crossovers in this series. I believe it's issue 3, maybe 4 actually, when we get the Aquaman Superboy crossover of sorts, where we're introduced to an Admiral Strom that I'm sure will play a factor later on in the Peter David run. And in that, he encounters, he comes into conflict even with Superboy, who at that time had really just come into creation. He was fresh off the heels of Reign of the Supermen, no longer trying to be Superman. He had settled into the role as Superboy, and he was working in Hawaii at Pearl Harbor with his own cast of characters. And he shows up here and comes into conflict even with Aquaman, Aqualad, and Dolphin. And I actually enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this issue. It was a nice throwback to me for the sort of intentionally young and impetuous version of Superboy, the very young who will later become Connor Kent, leather jacket and all, and fish jokes, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed him, and he gets humbled a little bit.
He needed to be humbled old country way, I'm afraid.
You wanted him to have his back broken and you know, the other thing.
Get put in the camel clutch.
Yeah. What? The camel clutch?
Clutch. I don't know, man.
Well, you know, what hurts the most, though, in that situation is the lack of respect.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That and the other thing.
The other thing. But, yeah, so the one element of this issue I wanted to bring up that I didn't like, at the very end, so Superboy is told to stand down by this Admiral guy, and begrudgingly he does, even though he's just kind of had his ass kicked. So as they're walking by, you know, Arthur and Garth, they just kind of walk past him, and then for no adequately explained reason except that she's a hot chick, Dolphin comes up to Superboy and kisses him on the cheek, and then leaves.
Yes.
This guy she was just fighting. Nick, why was that?
I don't know the answer to that. Dolphin was just looking for any boat in a storm, I guess it would be, to fill her port.
She needed to tie off some loose ends?
I guess so. I don't know, man. It was weird.
She needed pleasures the likes of which she's never known. In any event, she kisses Superboy and leaves him in a state of sexual confusion. And that does give way to what was probably I don't know, there were a lot of good issues in this run, but probably my favorite issue of this book was the Lobo crossover. And I know that you interestingly said you didn't like the Superboy one because of the 90s nature of it, and just that character doesn't work for you. The Lobo issue worked for me in a huge way, to such a degree that I really wish Peter David had an ongoing Lobo series at some point, because he writes the main man really well. It made me flash back to my childhood and just reminded me why I loved Lobo so much. And it wasn't to do with, you know, any of the sort of stereotypes of he's a 90s guy with big guns and big muscles. It was because he was funny as hell.
Yeah,
and
Lobo always
brilliant
worked.
Satire of that style.
It's hard to do bad Lobo, I've come to see. Even the Lobo that isn't as good as others is at least moderately funny, especially in the modern context when he's used as a joke for the most part. Yeah, I enjoyed this issue as well. Not as much as you did, obviously, not having the affinity for comics from that era that you do, but I still thought it was a solid enough issue. My issue with the 2-part story, as I said before, was the whole subplot of the Pearl Harbor stuff and like the dolphins in captivity being experimented on or whatever the hell was going on there. Just didn't work for me as some of the other more traditionally comic book villain storylines did.
You didn't feel sympathy for Dr. Shinobi when he passed away?
Dr. Shinobi. No, I did not.
Well, nonetheless, and then we kind of close out this story, and we finish with Charybdis pretty early on. Aquaman gets his harpoon attachment. Aqualad, meanwhile, goes off in search of his deceased lover, Tula, who is a prominent figure from the history of Aquaman, and thinks that he's seen her back to life, basically. So he goes off on his own mission. While he's doing that, Aquaman and Dolphin find their way back to Alaska, which we last visited in Time and Tide, as Aquaman is trying to find his father, the Atlantean wizard, Atlan. And in this, they find an Alaska that is far different from what Aquaman remembered, and they introduce us to a brand new character here, Nick, which is Aquaman's son, who he refers to as a little bastard at one point.
Actually, she is. He is. He's your little bastard.
He's your little bastard. I loved that ending, Nick. That was one of the great cliffhangers in this entire series. Who's this little bastard? Oh, that's funny, Arthur. About our tour, about that. He's your little bastard.
Now I want
the look of horror on Aquaman's face when she said that.
Yes, now I want a version of Aquaman in animation that's voiced by Mike Judge as Principal McVicker.
Yeah, you can actually hear, like, if you look at his face and you put the sound effect to him. Oh!
Little bastard.
Little bastard. Oh!
God.
So, yeah, Aquaman, poor Aquaman, in a life full of turmoil, he has been hating his father for so long for impregnating his mother and then abandoning her, and now he finds out that he did the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. So he can just add that on to all the things he loathes about himself.
Yes, he's as if he needed any more in this book. He's lost everything that ever made his life worth living, and now he just needs to add another piece of guilt on top of it. Good stuff.
Absolutely. And his son, Corey, who has a longer name than that, can't remember, Nick. What is the actual name of him?
Your guess is as good as mine, sir.
Koryuk? Is that it?
Sure. Let's go with that.
So that's his boy. and his boy has inherited some of his powers, but interestingly enough, Nick seems to have Mira-like powers as well, to command the oceans a little bit, or at least command water a little bit. And Arthur even remarks at one point that he thought Mira was the only one that had that power. And so and that's pretty interesting. And so he also has a bit of hero in him, and you get the feeling that he's going to play a huge role in this Peter David run going forward, do you not?
Yeah, that would certainly be the implication, because by the end of the storyline, he has lost his mother in something, not in a traditional sense. She lives on as this bizarre elemental character who I've also forgotten the name of. You can tell I just paid close attention.
Corona.
Yeah. There you go. That's because she didn't give herself a name until like an issue after she debuted. But in any event, he's lost his mother to this elemental possession, I guess you could say, and has no family left in life. So I would assume that part of the story is going to be, Aquaman's alone, this guy's alone. They're going to go off and become wacky father and son who hate each other.
Vince Russo's favorite father and son dynamic.
Yes.
So, that was that. Again, all that worked for me. I appreciated the family element of this. I liked seeing Aquaman in an unusual position of taking on soldiers from Apocalypse, which actually, I don't know about you, Nick, but kind of got me hoping that perhaps we will see that followed up on at some point, because Darkseid does not take kindly to failure from his minions. So I would assume that his minions will be, taken care of. And then perhaps an appearance by, if not Darkseid, then some other Apocalyptians later on in Peter David's run. I liked all that stuff and was curious how Aquaman was going to deal with these guys and what the ramifications might be of that.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting. You would think that with 6 Apocalyptians facing him down, he would be a little bit outmatched and outgunned, but that didn't wind up being the case, thanks to the inclusions of Garth and Dolphin, of course, being there to help him out, and then this Corona character and his newfound little bastard all coming around. You kind of had this little, like, Aqua team against the Deep Six dynamic that kind of worked. I wound up enjoying these last few issues. And like you said, because the sun is there, the implication is that aspect will be developed further as we go forward. It does make me more interested to read more of this Peter David Aquaman, even though I acknowledge my time and my willingness to read anything at this point is pretty low. So while I would like to, it's probably one of those things that I say I'll do it and then I never actually do it.
Right. Well, we haven't talked much about the art yet, and that is kind of something that we have to get into. We talked about it last week, the inconsistency in Time and Tide, where there were issues that looked, brilliant, and there were issues that looked all over the place, especially as it moved along. I thought from the get-go that I liked the art better in the early issues of this book. I thought this art from Martin Egeland seemed to be much more to my liking. However, as it went along, I began to realize, and admittedly this was pointed out by my boss when he saw me reading these issues at work one day, not during work, but at a luncheon, and he pointed out that is like the most 90s art that you could possibly find. Everyone is gritted teeth. Everyone is squinty eyes. Mm-hmm. Everyone is angry seemingly in every panel. Giant guns. Whenever guns appear, they're just these enormous guns. There's, the Dolphin is just in a perpetual state of sexual idealism, I guess you would say.
Which not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, quite frankly. Aquaman looks like he's been hanging and banging, brother. And, the art is certainly of its time. I will say that. As someone who grew up reading 90s comics, I definitely see a lot of the X-Men comics that I read as a kid in this, with the anger and the sexualization and all that stuff. And there's a place for that. I don't really have a huge problem with any of that. But I will say it can be off-putting if you're a more modern reader and you're used to the way comic books look now. It's probably actually easier to go back and look at Bronze Age comics than to look at something like this and see, why is everybody so pissed off all the time? Why does everybody look like they're in the middle of taking a dump?
Not that there's anything wrong with that either.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. People take dumps.
One of our favorite books featured a guy with a television head taking a dump. So taking a dump in comics can be good.
And I love 90s comics. I do. I have a nostalgia for them. But I can acknowledge that there are some moments in this book, Nick, where it gets a little ridiculous, and there are some vintage 90s anatomy problems in here, including in one panel where Aquaman's head appears to be in the middle of his chest for some reason.
Well, it was a different...
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
It was the style at the time. Sometimes heads moved around. Sometimes men had large, voluptuous breasts. There were patches and pouches and patches and pockets.
Sometimes men had no feet at all.
Sometimes. It's just one of those things that you have to... when they did have feet, they were often shaped nothing like an actual foot would be in real life. So,
more triangular than anything else.
Yeah, you just gotta roll with these things. You can't get too caught up on minor details like realism and consistency when it comes to 90s art. You just kind of got to go with it.
And I did think, Nick, that the Jim Caliafore issue was probably the best drawn of the bunch, to me anyway. I liked his... not that Egeland was bad per se, but I thought his was the most consistent and had the best visual style. And hopefully he'll come back later on if we ever do another Peter David volume in the future.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't even remember which issue he drew. So,
well, I don't either, or else I would have mentioned it. But I do remember seeing his name on the issue and thinking, this style is a little bit better, a little bit more streamlined for me than what we got before. There were. I will say this, though, Nick, in Martin Egeland's favor, there were some really clever panel designs in this. I think of one in particular where Dolphin is swimming and her hair turns into like a flashback sequence on the page, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, the art was shaky, but I think it was the same thing, issue with as we mentioned with Time and Tide. It was just so inconsistent. And here it makes a level of sense because you're kind of swapping artists in and out. But even when you had the one guy who started the run, it could just look so different from page to page and panel to panel. Makes you wonder if perhaps the stringent adherence to deadlines back then was detrimental to the art, because it seems like these books came out every month back then. There weren't as many delays, it seems like anyway, as they are today, and the art certainly suffers from a consistency standpoint as a result of that, I think.
We also have gone this whole time. One thing that we like to do, Nick, as larger gentlemen, is we like to point out in comic books when we come across characters who Scott Steiner might refer to as fat.
Now, Greg,
And I think that our beloved Volko applies here. I rather enjoyed Volko and his unique... Now, what's interesting about Volko, Nick, is he is not your traditional comic book fat guy. Because usually in comic books, the fat guy is, he's a fat belly or what have you, fat neck maybe. But Volko is interesting in that his lower body appears fatter than his upper body.
Yeah, he's kind of shaped like a Christmas tree a little bit. You got to get this, a Christmas tree because you got the legs that are kind of tiny. He actually looks a lot like Volstagg. Volstagg's kind of shaped in a similar.
He's Volstaggian.
In a similar fashion.
Is Volstaggian.
But he's wise. This guy's very wise and gives sage advice and stuff.
Has a mustache.
I'm sure he twirls it from time to time. All good things.
Absolutely. In many ways, that's an interesting question. Did you get, obviously this is a different characterization, but I think Aquaman is kind of, in the modern context, we're used to a lot of the political angles of Aquaman through the New 52 and Rebirth. And so there's a natural kind of Thor tie there. But I still got a little bit of that in this with some of the supporting characters and, the Atlantean chronicles and all that stuff.
I guess a little bit, especially because, in this story, as we mentioned, you have the hero who grows out a beard and loses a limb, both of which were major staples or aspects of the Walt Simonson run on Thor for a time. And even the lost limb has come back around in the Jason Aaron run in recent years. So, yeah, I can see a little bit of that comparison.
Well, with all that being said, let's take an analysis of what we make of what has been our first foray into Peter David's Aquaman run. For me, this has been really cool because it's different than what I'm used to. It is not the Jeff Johns Aquaman. It is not the Dan Abnett Aquaman. It is its own deal, and I actually really enjoyed reading this because while everything didn't hit with me the way that it probably hit with readers at the time. And I certainly don't feel that this is, for me anyway, it didn't land with me the way that Jeff Johns' Aquaman did. I will say that the building blocks are here for an epic run. They're planting enough seeds for the future. And even though this isn't the origin for Aquaman or the Atlantean wizard thing doesn't do much for me necessarily, Peter David's writing of Aquaman is so good. His characterizations are so good across the board. The dialogue. I really want to see more of this take on Arthur Curry. I want to see more of this warrior that is hard around the edges and doesn't mind if he has to stab someone through the heart to get the job done. I enjoyed this overall, Nick.
Yeah, I did as well. Like we said earlier, there are a few places where I feel like I'm missing a little bit of information, but that's fine. I didn't feel like I was missing so much information that I couldn't follow the story. If anything, it makes me want more context. It makes me interested to go both backward to learn how we arrived at this point, and also to go forward to see how we move forward from this point. So it really works in all respects of doing that job of making you want to see more. So thumbs up for me as well.
All right. Well, folks, that about does it. I can't think of anything else to say about this volume than what we have. We both liked it. We probably did not love it to the degree that we have some of the recent stuff, but I think for its time, it stands out very well, and I'm curious to see where it goes. So let us know your thoughts on the Peter David Aquaman run. What are some of the best stories throughout this run that we should check out in the future? What were your takes if you're reading this along with us? Shoot us a message on Twitter. I am at gphillips8652. He is at Nick Duke 87. You can also hit us up on the Place to Be Nation Comics Facebook page. Just go to Facebook, type in Place to Be Nation Comics. You'll find us. You'll join us. You'll have fun. You can also send us emails. The loneliest email addresses on the internet: Greg P at placetobenation.com, Nick D at placetobenation.com. Now, we hope you stay with us through the break, because when we come back, we have got an extended edition of Reading and Watching. We've also got the rundown, and we will be right back.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Place to Be Nation's Justin Rosero and Chad Campbell here, and we want to let you know that we have a ton of great podcasts available to you on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and PlayStation.com, and we now offer them to you on 2 great feeds. On the PlayStation Wrestling feed, we bring you the Mothership, the Place to Be podcast, Main Event, Survey Says, Wrestling Warzone, a Monday Night Wars podcast retrospective, No Holds Barred, Jeff Learns Wrestling, and our monthly pay-per-view reaction shows. On top of that, we're also dipping into the vault, re-releasing the entire catalog of where the big boys play for your enjoyment. In addition to these full-length shows, we also deliver special network pod blasts on topics old and new.
The Place to Be Nation Pop feed is loaded with great content, offering such tremendous shows covering the land of pop culture, such as Geek and Sassy, Talkin' Pop, the Glenn Butler Podcast Hour Spectacular, Sunday Groove, PTB in Play, Freak Out Drive-In, Songs with Friends, Looking Forward, Looking Back, and Lucha Undead, as well as a veritable podcast heaven for comics fans with the Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Sellers Points, Conversation Comics, DC Post-Crisis Management, Marvel Age, and Marvel Age Masterclass, plus weekly pod blasts that cover the gamut of comic topics. The feed is also filled with insightful sports content, including the NBA team, This Week in the NFL, and more.
And you can find all these current shows, plus archives of our past podcasts, including The Kevin Kelly Show, as well by subscribing to both feeds on iTunes. And while there, be sure to rate and leave feedback as well. All of these shows, plus others available at PlayStation.com. We cover pro wrestling, sports, movies, comics, in-depth stretch projects, and more. Be sure to support our site by using PlayStation.com/Amazon while doing your online shopping. And download our free PTB Vintage Vault Refresh ebooks via the links on our site. We also want to thank our friends at Boneheads Wing Bar, ProWrestlingOnly.com, and TheHistoryOfWrestling.com. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr as well. PlayStation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
I don't care what the people say. Christmas is really good. Welcome back to the Hard-Traveling Studios. Nick, were you didn't play your ukulele part there?
Oh, well, you know, I am a man of many musical talents, and I wasn't prepared there with the ukulele. I apologize.
Oh, well, you can't win them all. Just like you can't all, well, we'll get there some other time. But one thing we can all do is agree that it's time.
Are you saying, Greg? Were you implying?
No, I wasn't.
Are you
Wasn't
implying
anything? No, I wasn't.
That we can't all do something with The Undertaker. And what I mean by do something with The Undertaker is place something into something else. Maybe even place
my dolphin into his, I don't know.
Place
Atlantis.
Your name of popular internet talk show. I don't know.
I see what you did there, Nick.
Yeah. See? What people don't know is sometimes during the break we have other conversations, and what we're doing is making a reference to a conversation you didn't hear about a topic you don't care about to make a joke that you wouldn't find funny in the least. Once again, folks, this podcast is made for an audience of two.
Absolutely. And this audience of two believes that it's time for the longest running segment on our show. And that is where we tell you all about what we've been reading and watching in the world of comics. That segment that everyone knows the world over. You see it on t-shirts. You hear it at the airports. Reading and watching. Now, Nick, have you been reading anything?
No.
By the way, before I get to what I've been reading, I love this. This is delicious to me, Nick, because for so long on this show, you mocked and belittled me for not reading things for reading and watching.
That's true.
You lambasted me. You threw me under the bus every week talking about how I was lazy and unprepared and didn't read anything.
Yes.
And had stacks of comics that I hadn't read yet.
Yes.
And now, what do you have, Nick? I ask you, Mr. Green Lantern, what do you have sitting in your closet?
Oh, I thought you were going to go for and It's a Wonderful Life reference, as you often do this time of year with baseless accusations about my moral fiber, but that's neither here nor there.
What are you but a warped, frustrated old man?
I am rapidly becoming a warped, frustrated old man, and I have no issue with it.
Well, what are you but a warped, frustrated young man? Hello, Bailey, it's Potter. Anyway.
Good stuff.
You know, Mr. Potter had a lot of money, though. There's worse lives.
God, I wish I would. Yeah, I would trade my life for Mr. Potter's. That'd be fine. Money and stuff. They say that money can't buy happiness, but I gotta tell you, folks, I have noticed that in life, the more money I make, generally, the more happy I am. So I think those people who say that are people who don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
And usually, people with money.
Yes. That's also a good point.
Anyway, where were we? Oh, yes.
Reading and watching. You read something. You were mocking me for not reading anything instead of actually talking about what you did read. But by all means, go ahead now.
What I read, I purchased the adorable issue number 8 of Doomsday Clock from DC Comics. Because on the cover, Nick, is a close-up. The cover that I got, and there's 2 different covers. The cover that I got from Gary Frank is a close-up shot of Boobastis, but not the adult Boobastis, but the Boobastis.
I was hoping it would be a close-up shot of Dr. Manhattan's wang.
No, we got some of that in the last issue, Nick.
Oh, boy.
But here we get a close up of baby Boobastis, and it's cute as a button. The issue, Doomsday Clock number 8 by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank, continues I'm not going to spoil anything really about the plot details here. I don't want to ruin it for you, Nick, or for anybody else that's reading the series. Mm-hmm. It just continues to meet the high level of excellence that we've expected from this series to date. The art is the best work of Gary Frank's incredible career, in my opinion, and I've read a ton of stuff by him. He's never been at a higher level. We're getting a lot more DC Universe stuff here, and we're starting to see what happens when prominent figures from the Watchmen universe begin to weave threads throughout the DC universe, and we're seeing that a lot of history repeating itself, if you will, and it's really playing out in a very compelling manner. We get notably a major plot involving Firestorm in this, which I know was appreciated by a lot of diehard Firestorm fans, including our buddy the manager, Todd Weber, and that was really awesome. Black Adam pops up and is awesome. It's just an outstanding issue in an outstanding series, Nick. I'm excited for you to maybe have a chance to catch up at some point in the next month or so.
At some point, it's going to happen, probably.
And that's it for me reading. Go out and buy Doomsday Clock, folks. You won't regret it. It's been outstanding to this point. And I just dropped it on the floor. So, Nick, no more reading. So what do you say that we get into watching a little bit here?
Let's do that. Watching, which there's a lot of this week.
There is. And before we get into our sort of crossover watching, why don't you tell us some of the things that you have been watching outside of our typical DC CW stuff and the movies?
Oh man. Yeah. So I have, I had a little bit of time, the last couple of days, being it's around the holiday season, I've had some time at home, and, I decided to finally finish the last episode of Luke Cage, season 2 of Luke Cage, which will wind up being the series finale that we didn't expect, when it happened, now that the show has been canceled, but been slowly working my way through Luke Cage for some time now, and I finally popped on the last episode, and it was okay. It's kind of weird in that most of the action actually wraps up in the penultimate episode before really, just using the finale as something of an epilogue. It's very slow. It's very deliberate. It's mostly focused on these characters and how they've been affected by the journey that the season has taken them on. And the series ends, or the season, I should say, ends with Luke Cage in a place that, you know, coming into the series or into the season, I would not have expected him to go, and would have honestly hated if you would have told me that's where he was going to wind up. But the episode does a lot of work in trying to get you to buy this and understand it from Luke's perspective as to why he would take the actions that he does. And it's something of a cliffhanger for what it would have been a very, very interesting season 3 that we'll never get to see. So I'm hoping that one day Marvel could possibly, you know, release season 3 in like a comic book format so we can kind of get this story wrapped up, because this was clearly meant to be the opening salvo of a larger story and not be the end of this character's journey. So leaving him in this place is a very strange place to end Luke Cage as a series.
Interesting. What else have you been watching?
So after I finished Luke Cage, I was like, well, I got some time on my hands. I'm not doing much, and I really want to watch Daredevil season 3. That's what I want to do, but you know, I'm a completionist when it comes to this Marvel Netflix. I am dedicated to my craft, so I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to bite the bullet, and I'm going to watch season 2 of Iron Fist. So, you know, late last night, the night before we recorded this podcast, I popped on the first episode of season 2 of Iron Fist, and I watched it, and it was shockingly good. I don't know that it was great, but seeing as how my expectations were just to be a continuation of season 1 of Iron Fist, hey man, the fights were better, the dialogue was better, Danny Rand wasn't just an annoying character that walked around saying, I'm Danny Rand all the time. The Meacham fuckery was mostly kept to a minimum, and it brought back Davos, who was a very interesting character, I thought, from season 1 that got short shrift.
What?
Yeah, season 1 had Davos, but it wasn't in there enough. So I watched that first episode, and I was like, hey man, that wasn't bad. So I went to bed, and I woke up today, and I was kind of at home, and I was like, well, you know, I kind of enjoyed that first episode. Let's see how long they can continue this momentum. So I popped on episode 2, and it was pretty good. And then the next thing you know, I watched 9 episodes of Iron Fist in a row. I watched 9 of the 10 episodes today in a single sitting. Just watched them back to back to back to back to back. And I have to say, a good season of Marvel Netflix. I didn't see it coming. It's still not like... I think you and I are both in agreement that our ideal version of an Iron Fist show would be something similar to what Into the Badlands is over at AMC, or something structured more like a traditional like martial arts film or something like that. And I think that's both what we're kind of hoping is the rumored Shang-Chi MCU film will wind up being. But I would describe Iron Fist Season 2 as like... It's the ideal version of what they wanted season 1 to be. It's character driven, and the characters are mostly well written and interesting. People have believable motivations, and the fight scenes are so much better. And I think they realize the assets they have in giving Colleen Wing an expanded role in the show. I think giving Davos, making him the primary antagonist for the entire season was a good call, and reducing the episode count from 13 to 10 episodes did wonders. And also, Alice Eve playing the debuting version of Typhoid Mary from the comics, a character with dissociative identity disorder. She was really good, I thought, in this series. She was honestly the most interesting part of the show, and I was more intrigued by what she was going to do in a given episode than anything else, just because of the unpredictability of her character and the ability of both the writers and the actress to differentiate between the two personalities so well. Yeah, I mean, near the end, I thought they increased the role for the fucking Meachams, who are useless, in my opinion. And that kind of slowed some of the momentum of the show as we neared the end. But then they stepped up by giving Colleen a really interesting place to be left. Her and Danny both have pretty interesting directions that lead them on separate paths at the end of the show. And it's another example of this feels like a tease for a larger story that's going to be told that we're never going to see. Season 1 of Iron Fist, easily, by far, one of the worst seasons of television I've ever seen. this righted the ship, and actually I would be interested and somewhat looking forward to seeing a season 3 of Iron Fist that isn't going to come now. So I was as surprised as anyone, but I am going to give not 2 thumbs up, I'll give 1 thumbs up to season 2 of Iron Fist.
1 thumbs up, eh?
1 thumbs up.
Unique. Well, cool. Interesting. Glad you enjoyed that, much to your surprise and mine, and I think everyone's listening at home.
I was surprised. The only thing that sucks, I'll say, is I would tell you just to skip ahead to season 2, but season 2 very much is dependent on you at least having some of the plot knowledge from season 1.
Could you get that plot knowledge from a Wikipedia article?
I don't know. I haven't read the Wikipedia article, so I can't answer that question.
You have not conversed with it?
No. I don't sit around reading Wikipedia articles out loud all the time. That is a different podcast here on the Place to Be Nation Pop Network.
Moving along, we have. Let's move over to our beloved CW DC universe, and before we get to the big one, Nick, let's hit up the Legends of Tomorrow mid-season finale, which I actually just watched before this podcast. And
there is no way to have an objective discussion about any of the DC shows that I watched this week because they were all just fucking amazing in every way.
Yep.
And I'll just sit here and verbally fillet them for an extended period of time. So, like, whatever details you want to touch on, I am up for doing that. It was all just fucking awesome, and a reminder that Legends, when it's on, is unlike anything else that I'm watching on television right now, and it would be a crime if the CW chose to deprive us of this show going forward.
Absolutely. You said it, Bubba. This episode just watch it. Just go and watch this whole
It's really kind of like crazy to even try and explain the plot of the episode. Like, the idea is that Constantine has broken time by going back and undoing something. But then the places the episode takes you with his attempts to fix time are too difficult to attempt to explain, because it essentially is Legends of Tomorrow's mid-season finale examining the entire season before it, every episode, as if things had gone drastically different. And I will say, the one way I would be willing to accept, Greg, a Legends of Tomorrow cancellation is if it would be replaced by the Custodians of the Chronology.
That would be great. I would also accept the Sirens of...
Oh, yeah, the Sirens of Space-Time.
Space-Time, or my favorite of the bunch, DC's Puppets of Tomorrow.
That was good.
We got in one episode parodies of the A-Team, Charlie's Angels, The Muppet Show, action movies, the show itself. Absolutely phenomenal. What about we love it when Legends gets meta. What about when they get back and to the ship, the Custodians, and Gideon tells them that they've missed a call from Barry Allen, and then they said, sounds like the annual crossover.
It said they've missed a call from Barry Allen, Kara Zor-El, and Oliver Queen.
And Oliver Queen.
Yes.
It sounds like the annual crossover. Hard pass.
Yes.
Just an outstanding episode. To me, it actually picked the show back up after what I thought was a little bit of a letdown the last couple weeks that were still solid but not great. This was a great Legends episode. This is a reminder that, like you said, Nick, when it's on, it's like nothing else. And this was just batshit crazy and so much fun.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly.
Well, I mean, I don't know how much we're even going to have to say about this, but let's go ahead and get to the big one of the past week.
What do you even? How do you? Where do you? Why do you?
So this past week was also the aforementioned annual crossover. This time involving just Arrow, The Flash, and Supergirl, and it was called Elseworlds, a name that holds great value to DC Comics fans. Over the course of 3 episodes, the CW and the DC universe on the CW, the Arrowverse, proceeded to go out and somehow, after last season we said we didn't know how they would top the crossover, they came out and they not only topped that crossover, they set it ablaze and burned that son of a bitch to the ground with the best crossover they've done yet, in my opinion. This was amazing from beginning to end for a 3-part crossover. They introduced us to new characters: Lois Lane, Batwoman, Dr. Destiny, the Monitor. They showed us old characters in new ways, as Barry and Oliver have their body swap in this episode. Seeing Oliver Queen, or seeing Stephen Amell have to portray an Oliver Queen who is happy and even a jokester at times and is happy-go-lucky. Likewise, seeing Barry Allen have to become dark and gritty and actually deliver the classic "You have failed this city" line. Seeing how those two interact with each other over the course of 3 episodes. Seeing Kara just have so much fun doing the Arrow, whether it was her doing the Green Arrow voice or anything else. The accurate, comic book accurate version of the Monitor that we got in a way that I don't think any of us expected. The appearance in this crossover of John Wesley Shipp's 1990 Flash in a way that was very similar to the Justice League movie, how Flash made his appearance, except, stop me if I'm wrong here, Nick, much, much, much better.
Yes. As we've said, privately to each other in offline conversation, you could say this last year as well, but this year, there's no doubt. I don't think it's even close. For 2 straight years, arguably, the CW has essentially made a better Justice League movie on TV than Warner Brothers did in live action last year. And this year, it ain't even close, man. It is. They blew it out of the water. This is the best live action interpretation of the Justice League, even though they never called themselves the Justice League, that I've ever seen. It was outstanding.
Yep. The best live action Justice League we've ever gotten. This was a case of leaving the audience wanting more, right? Mm-hmm. They left us with the mother of all teases for what's coming next year, Crisis on Infinite Earths. I don't think it's too much of a spoiler at this point, Nick. It's been on the internet for a week now. It's everywhere. They teased that for the next year's big event, and it looks, based on the teases, like it's going to be a major event, as it should be, as it is probably the biggest event in DC Comics history. I can't wait, man. I'm so excited to see where they go from here, because the chemistry of this cast, especially the 3 leads of Stephen Amell, Grant Gustin, and Melissa Benoist, I'll follow them through any journey that they do on TV. But in this case, doing the biggest DC story of all time with some of the homages and the references that were here, Nick, to other shows in the past, I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm pumped as well, although we got to acknowledge it since we're reviewing the episode, the crossover. I'm both anticipating it, looking forward to it, and I'm also dreading it, because I am afraid this is going to be the end of our beloved Oliver Queen.
Yeah, it certainly looks that way. Oliver makes a deal with the Monitor to save the lives of Barry and Kara at one point. And certainly if you follow the trail of crumbs on Arrow recently, it does unfortunately look like this could be the end of the trail for Oliver. He may be on borrowed time moving forward, Nick. But nonetheless, what an outstanding crossover. And I thought Stephen Amell in particular he and Grant Gustin both really were outstanding in all 3 episodes. Would you agree?
I thought that pretty much everybody, all the major actors involved, actors and actresses, knocked it out of the park. I know this take on Lois Lane has been not universally beloved by those in the Place to Be Nation comic circle, but I actually really liked her. I thought the writers did a good job of capturing that Lois attitude. I thought the actress brought that through to the screen. And then, of course, we've talked many times about Tyler Hoechlin and his performance as Clark. That was good. You had, what's the guy's name? Jeremy Davies, I believe it is, as Dr. Deegan, and I thought he was appropriately creepy. This new guy, LaMonica Garrett, as the Monitor, I thought he was great. Pretty much all the major parties involved knocked it out of the park, so I was pumped, and this is gonna be a long, slow build wait now for Crisis on Infinite Earths, and I hope they go all out for it. I want Tom Welling. I want Michael Rosenbaum. I want even though he's like almost, I don't even know how old he is, 80 years old and decrepit at this point. I want at least like Burt Ward sitting in a coffee shop or something.
Burt Ward.
I want everything. I want every incarnation.
What about a cameo from Mark Hamill and Kevin Conroy?
Yes, I want that. I want cameos from everybody who would possibly be willing to do this. I want everything. I want fat Val Kilmer. I want, I want him to throw some money at George Clooney. I want everything. I want a Crisis that lives up to the name, and here's hoping we get it.
Absolutely. You said it perfect, Bubba. Maybe even some involvement from the DC universe shows. Who knows?
Awesome.
I'm the same way, man. I'm so excited for that and can't wait to see all that. I will say I'm somewhere in the middle on this Lois Lane. I'm not as negative on her as some are, and I'm not as positive on her as some are. I'm taking a wait and see approach to her. I need to see more from her to know if I like her Lois or not. But yeah, Tyler Hoechlin is fantastic as Clark Kent. And everything's just great. Their casting has been on point in this whole thing. We didn't talk about Batwoman, Nick. What did you make of Ruby Rose's Batwoman and this version of Gotham City?
Batwoman in action was awesome. And this version of Gotham City, which is telling a story of like something bad happened to Batman and or Bruce Wayne in the past. And I think part of the angle of the solo show is going to be slowly revealing what exactly the status quo of Gotham is. We know that things are worse than ever. We don't really know why or how they got that way. So I think you're going to have an easy parallel to like something like the first few seasons of Arrow, where I think there's going to be a flashback nature to it. I thought Ruby Rose, when she was in action, was great. I think as Kate Kane, the accent slipped a couple of times, but hard to complain too much about that when you have, I forget the actress's name, who's playing Lena Luthor, who her accent, can vary from moment to moment, much like Julianne Moore in Hannibal over on Supergirl. So not the worst accent I've ever heard, and hopefully something that will get better, but just something that I noticed a couple of times in the episode.
Yes, but let's not criticize Lena too much.
No, never.
But all that's excellent, and we've actually got a movie to talk about, Nick, in a moment. But I want to, before I forget, as I almost did, mention that I, alongside the host of the Sunday Groove, or Easy Like David Sunday, David Sunday, watched 2 more episodes of Titans over at Russell Sellers' place this past week. And these were the episodes, and Russell watched them along with us, obviously, but he had already seen them, I believe. We watched the episodes Asylum and Donna Troy, episodes 7 and 8 of Titans. We're still 2 behind, soon to be 3 behind. But these are the follow-ups to the Jason Todd episode that I talked about last week, Nick. And kind of a tale of 2 episodes to me. I thought this show continues, first of all, before I get in any of this show continues to be the biggest surprise of 2018 to me in the world of television. I was extremely negative on the concept of Titans going in, based on the trailers. Even the first episode, I was still kind of lukewarm on the concept, liked it more than I thought I would, but was still unsure. I'm pretty sure now. I really like, for the most part, where this show is going. The Asylum episode, though, may have been the darkest episode yet of Titans. It was mostly a really good episode. The writing was really good. But there's a decision that is made at the end by Dick that I didn't love. I have to be honest. I did not love Dick making this choice at the end of the episode that he makes. But on the other hand, it was a good episode otherwise. And then they followed it with an outstanding episode, one of the best to date, which was Donna Troy. And if you can imagine this, Nick, the Donna Troy episode is the introduction of Donna Troy.
Oh, my.
Yes. And, Nick, I don't know if you've seen images from this episode, but Donna Troy, I'm in favor.
I have not seen images from that episode, but let's see here on on the Google machine. Yep, let's see. Oh.
Yep.
Beast, fair.
So Donna Troy makes her first high cheekbones. Makes her first appearance here, and
JR's got a heart on.
I don't know the first thing about Donna Troy. I'll be honest with you. She's I know the first thing. I know very little about Donna Troy.
I have it on authority, or I've heard from multiple sources that the history of Donna Troy in the DC universe is not unlike the history of the X-Men over in the Marvel universe. In that, one, it's both incredibly complicated, and two, Jeremy Reynolds will tell you it's not that complicated.
Both of those things are true. Donna is a character that's always kind of flown underneath my radar in DC. So when I got back into comics, Donna had been dead for some time, and they were just bringing her back.
Yes.
And I never really got into the Titans mythology when I was a kid. I never read Teen Titans, the classic stories, and I never read any of the attempted reboots of Teen Titans. Even when Jeff Johns was writing it, I only read the very first volume many years later. So I don't know much about Donna outside of the rebirth version of Titans. So this was kind of a blank slate for me, but it was really, really good. This episode made me care about her. She's instantly likable in a way that to this point Starfire has not been on the show, which I think may change in the near future. And Donna is just instantly, you see why Dick is so taken with her and why everyone is, because she's got attitude, she's funny, she's kind-hearted, she's got all the qualities that we associate with Diana, but she's without that kind of self-seriousness that Diana has at times. So I really loved her relationship with Dick, her way of handling his issues was really interesting. The flashbacks to a young Dick Grayson and a young Donna Troy in Wayne Manor, listening to Bruce and Diana talk about the Joker was awesome. There's this great scene where young Dick is kind of at a crossroads with regards to the Joker, where he's ready to give up because no matter what they do, the Joker will never stop. And then she kind of talks him out of it. And talks him into staying with Bruce. So I thought this episode was outstanding, and excited for you to catch up on Titans, especially to see the Jason Todd and Donna Troy episodes.
I think the biggest obstacle for me catching up on Titans at this point, I obviously could have done that today instead of watching Iron Fist, but we only have a Roku in one room of our house right now. And so because it's not in my den where my television is, and because there is no DC Universe app for any other big, major viewing platform to watch on a television, that's kind of holding me back. Pretty much the only way I can watch right now is on an iPad or a phone. I would prefer not to do those things.
Right. Understandable. Well, let's move on to the other thing that we've been watching this past week, Nick. Both of us have gone to the movie theaters in IMAX and seen a little film called Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. This is, of course, the debut on the big screen of Miles Morales in animated form. And I've actually already done a pod blast on this, which is available alongside Russell Sellers here on the Pop feed. A little short pod blast.
Taking food off of the Hard-Traveling Fanboy plate and taking it elsewhere. I see how it goes, Greg.
But what I will do is I've said my piece elsewhere, and I'll add to it here and say that I love the movie, and it blew me away. From what I saw on the trailers last year, around this time actually, I was very skeptical of this film. And boy, do I have to eat crow now, because it ended up being amazing. And I will talk more about it after you have let the folks know your thoughts on it, as admittedly a bigger Spider-Man fan than me.
Yeah, obviously I loved it. Miles is a character I have a deep affinity for, given the fact that he was first introduced in the pages of Ultimate Spider-Man, where he took over for the dead Ultimate Peter Parker. And we get to see something of an adaptation of that here. Not a straight adaptation. Their version of Peter used in this universe is a little bit older, not the teenage version that we are accustomed to. And there are other certain liberties taken with Miles' origin and stuff, but pretty much the basic framework of that opening story is there. It's kind of like an adaptation, something like a mixture of an adaptation of Miles' origin story and Bendis' Spider-Men crossover that he did between 616 Peter and Ultimate Miles. The animation style, I mean, God, I don't even know what to add to it at this point. I think so many people, since the movie has been released, have praised it so much. It's something that took me about 3 to 5 minutes to get used to, but once I did, and I got locked into it and understood how the animation worked, which sounds weird to say. Like, normally you go see an animated movie and you don't really have to get adjusted to animation, because animation traditionally looks one of 3 or 4 different ways to you forever. This is something entirely new and different, and it was outstanding. From a technical aspect, probably the most impressive animated film I've ever seen. I know that covers a lot of ground, and that's somewhat controversial to say, but like, I can't say enough how mind-blowing I thought the visuals were. And then you get into
it was so dynamic.
Right.
It was the motion, the sense of replicating the action that you would see in a comic book in a movie. It was done as well as it's ever been done.
I would agree. You know, and it's just one of those things. Also, like the story. You know, I've never read Spider-Verse, the event that kind of was the inspiration for the majority of the plot. But I thought the story was really well done. You would think, hey, they're going to have all these spider characters running around. You're not going to get enough time with each of them to really care about them. But even the ones that got brief amounts of screen time, predominantly Spider-Man Noir, Spider-Ham, and Penny Parker, I thought they did a pretty good job of giving you enough there to get you to care about these characters and have some investment, some emotional investment in seeing them get back to where they needed to be, get back to their homes. I don't even know what else to say other than to say this movie was outstanding from beginning to end. Everything about it was expertly done, from the writing to the animation to the voice casting and vocal performances. If you're even kind of on the fence about seeing this movie, if you would even consider it, go see the movie. I promise you it'll be well worth your time, if only for the visuals and the technical aspect of watching all this unfold.
Totally agree.
In a year where we had so many good superhero movies and comic book related movies, there's a strong argument to be made that this might be the best comic book movie of the year, even if it didn't necessarily deliver, you know, nerd eye candy in the way that something like Avengers Infinity War did. This was outstanding. All the stars, all the stores for me.
Yeah, as someone that's never actually read a Miles Morales comic in his life, this movie made me love this character. I was already kind of predisposed to like this movie because it was using Miles, and I've mentioned before, Nick, that one of the areas where we diverge on Spider-Man Homecoming is I'm kind of over the idea of teenage Peter Parker, and I so enjoyed seeing an older version of Spider-Man, because that's what I grew up with. I grew up with a 20-something Spider-Man, not a teen-something Spider-Man, and to see both the early version of Peter Parker that we get in this movie, who's in his late 20s, and then especially to see the even older version that we get later on, I loved it. It was to me, it was such a great thing to see Peter in this mentor role, and to see Miles Morales, a character that is speaking to different audiences than any version of Spider-Man ever before, and felt fresh and felt new and felt invigorating. It was so cool. It was so inspiring to see, and I can't wait to see where this franchise goes. It feels like this movie felt so much of its time in a good way. I can't wait to see where they go with it. The voice work, Nicolas Cage as Spider-Man Noir, good Lord, so great. Really excited about where this franchise goes, Nick, and that's a pretty good segue, actually. Mm-hmm. Because we're going to go ahead and hit you up with our weekly look at the news and notes in the world of comics. We're going to hit you with a segment known as The Rundown.
Welcome to the Rundown, where we talk some comic news. Welcome to the Rundown.
And to kick things off, we have got the report that we are, of course, given its overwhelming box office success, we are getting a Spider-Verse sequel. That's obvious. But details have come out. The producer, Amy Pascal, has revealed some new information about the future of the Spider-Verse. She says that this is to Vanity Fair, the second Into the Spider-Verse movie will focus on Miles Morales and Gwen Stacy, who we saw, of course, in this movie, specifically on their budding romance, a plot point Pascal says didn't make it into the first film, although it kind of did. They just didn't follow through on it. Avatar: The Last Airbender TV director Joaquim Dos Santos will direct. He had a hand in this one as well, with a script from David Callahan, who was recently reported to be working on Marvel's Shang-Chi script. Plans for a previously rumored spin-off film are taking shape. Spider-Woman is happening, which will also be led by Gwen Stacy alongside Jessica Drew, a.k.a. Spider-Woman from the comics, and Cindy Moon, a.k.a. Silk. She also said that there are plans for something bigger down the road, saying, quote, "There's a world in which everything comes together, but that's not something we can talk about yet."
Interesting.
Very, 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 very interesting stuff here.
Read that
Nick.
last quote again.
I will as soon as I open the page back up again.
Yeah, you do that.
Right in
Dance,
front of me
monkey,
here.
dance.
It says, Pascal also hinted at plans for something bigger down the road, saying, quote, "There's a world in which everything comes together, but that's not something we can talk about yet," end quote.
Somehow trying to do a marriage of like every version of Spider-Man that we've seen before, I guess.
Perhaps so.
Interesting.
The only thing Pascal could confirm about this plan was that Sony's animated Spider-Verse and live-action Spider-Man universe that launched with Venom are entirely separate.
Interesting. But, I think as teased by the post-credit scene, we could see some version of like previous attempts at adapting Spider-Man to animation being brought into this, because the post-credit scene, without, and we'll just go ahead and spoil it here because I feel like it, brings in the 1967 animated version of Spider-Man in a hilarious post-credit scene. I would love to see that character involved somehow in a Spider-Verse sequel, because as we discussed offline, every superhero show of that time frame,
the heroes all sound the same.
Heroes all sound and act the exact same. They all have deep, barrel-chested voices. They all act like just the best person ever. And they're all just so fucking straight, I guess would be the best way to put it, that it would be hilarious to see that version of Peter Parker and Spider-Man bumping up against especially Spider-Ham and especially the fat, slovenly Peter Parker. Just so many different things that you can go with there. I'm all in on this for both the sequel that was mentioned that will focus on Miles and Gwen, and also the all-female spinoff. My only thing about that is, Gwen was great in this movie, don't get me wrong, and she certainly deserves some spotlight, but I'm concerned about doing multiple films revolving around her so quickly, because I don't want them to burn out the audience on what was a very special character very quickly. Yeah,
I'm curious as to what the big plan is too, that you mentioned, or that we talked about a moment ago, if they're tying in all the previous versions of Spider-Man. That would be cool if they could get some of the old actors, Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, whoever, to come back for something like that. But I don't know. It's interesting to suggest that. Or could she be hinting at further collaborations with Marvel Studios?
Don't know. Hard to say.
In any event, that was excellent and exciting news going.
No, I just thought about this, and it will never happen in a million years, but wouldn't it be cool, like, if there was, kind of like what happened in the comics, if they found a way to bring Miles into the MCU, and Shameik Moore, who voiced him, has talked about wanting to play him in live action too?
Oh my gosh.
That'd be cool.
It would. Yeah, it would. It would be very cool. Well, let's move on to the DC Universe app and the TV universe they're building over there. We have gotten 2 casting reports here for the Stargirl show to report on. We had some last week. We got more this week. Number 1 is that Lou Ferrigno Jr. has been cast as Our Man on the show. He will play the Rex Tyler version of Our Man and will be recurring throughout the first season. TV Line describes the character as a master chemist and adrenaline junkie who, as Our Man, is a thrill-seeking superhero with the ability to manifest super strength for 1 hour a day. He's also a founding member of the Justice Society of America, struggles with balancing his life as a hero and father. Interesting about that, Nick, is remember a couple years ago there were plans for an Our Man TV show, if you remember that.
I do remember that.
And it never happened. So this is kind of maybe probably a way to tie him in and explore him a little bit without doing a solo show based around him. We also got news that the actor Brian Stapp, who is mainly known for bit roles and other things, has been cast as Wildcat, Ted Grant. Now, we've seen versions of Wildcat in live action before on Smallville, and of course, notably on Arrow, back in, I believe, season 2. But he will be a more recurring character on Stargirl. Of course, he is the hand-to-hand expert of the JSA. So, casting announcements here, Nick. Any thoughts?
One, I don't know who the fuck this guy playing Wildcat is, but, cool that we're getting Wildcat. Our Man, I wish it was Lou Ferrigno Sr. playing him. Just to keep keeping with the old as fuck version of the Justice Society that I tend to prefer.
Yes.
Yes. Young, sexy Justice Society does not do much for me. I'm going to be honest, but this should be good. Jeff Johns heavily involved. We know he cares about Stargirl deeply as a character, so I'm in for this, and hopefully it'll be good.
Well, let's move on from the DC Universe television world to the comic book world. And you would assume this would at some point, hopefully, end up on the rotational DC Universe app. Batman's 80th anniversary is coming up, and with it, the release of Detective Comics 1000. This follows up Action Comics 1000 this past year, and will be a blowout celebration of the most popular character in DC, Batman. And it will debut March 27th, 2019, include all new stories and a wraparound cover from the team of Jim Lee, Scott Williams, and Alex Sinclair. That's right, the classic Batman Hush artistic team is back for this cover. Here's a little bit of the lineup of what we're getting in Detective 1000. We are getting an original story from the team of writer Peter J. Tomasi and artist Doug Mankey. They are launching a new story arc, and their run on this character, and also introduces a new version of the Arkham Knight to DC Comics canon. This is a character from the video game that I haven't played yet. Detective 1000 also features a 2-page spread spotlighting the current state of the Batman universe by Jason Fabok, and a bunch of original stories from a bunch of creative teams from the history of Batman, including, but presumably not limited to, Kevin Smith and Jim Lee, Brian Michael Bendis and Alex Maleev, Warren Ellis and Becky Cloonan, Paul Dini and Dustin Nguyen, Denny O'Neil and Steve Epting in a sequel to O'Neill's 1976 detective story, There's No Hope in Crime Alley. Great story, by the way. Christopher Priest and Neil Adams. Jeff Johns and Kelly Jones. Tom King, Tony Daniel, and Joel Jones. Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo. James Tynion IV and Alvaro Martinez.
Yeah, all right.
Weren't they the creative team for this detective run that you adored so much?
I was playing around.
Oh, anyway, your thoughts on this lineup? Nick?
Oh, this sounds awesome. I wouldn't be surprised if it continues to expand as well. Remember, we thought we had gotten the full creative team for Action 1000. They kept adding people, the closer it got. So I wouldn't be surprised if this roster continues to expand as well. But even if it doesn't, that is a hell of a roster. I mean, Warren Ellis, Paul Denny, in addition to these other guys who are currently writing the main title, whether it's Peter Tomasi or Tom King, Jeff Johns, for God's sake. Jeff Johns and Kelly Jones, by the way. What a freaking pairing. That's going to be awesome.
Oh, I know. That's fantastic.
And for me, Kevin Smith and Jim Lee. You kidding me? Oh.
Imagine if Kevin Smith and Jim Lee combined their abilities to delay comics.
Maybe it'll cancel each other out. I mean, I think that's the hope.
No, I'm excited. In all honesty, it's my favorite artist in comics, so I'm obviously super.
And you would think that with something as landmark and important as Detective 1000, editorial control on Kevin Smith will probably be high. So let's hope that it's good Kevin Smith and not shitty pothead Kevin Smith.
Yes, and right now I am currently trying to find a better article about the Detective 1000 cover reveals that kind of breaks them down by decade. Mm-hmm. We got the reveal of all the different covers that we're getting to 1000, and much like Action 1000, there we go. Much like Action 1000, we are getting tributes to each and every era of the Dark Knight. And they are Steve Rude's cover of the 1930s era of Batman, which is, I believe, designed to look like Steve Rude's cover of Batman 1930s. You get Bruce Timm homaging Jerry Robinson to celebrate the 40s. You get Michael Cho for the 1950s. You get Jim Steranko with the 1960s cover. Bernie Wrightson with the 1970s cover that I love, by the way. Frank Miller's Dark Knight representing the 1980s with a new cover. Tim Sale for the 90s. Jock for another great cover
Jock
for
covers
2000s. And Greg Capullo for the 2010s variant. Nick, what are your thoughts on these covers? Which ones stand out to you?
The Jock one, obviously. The Steranko one, just because Steranko is doing it. And, of course, the main one by Jim Lee, because it's freaking Jim Lee doing a Batman cover. So, excited for all these. I'm probably not going to buy multiple versions because that's not really my thing, But these are all awesome, and I'm glad that I got to see them at least in digital format.
Absolutely. This Jock cover could be my new iPhone wallpaper. I love it that much.
Pretty damn good.
And then the Bernie Wrightson 70s cover is awesome too. And then, not to take anything away from Bruce Timm's Jerry Robinson homage, really, really good stuff across the board here, and exciting stuff coming from Detective 1000.
Mm-hmm.
And by George, Nick, I believe that's it for the rundown. Unless you have another PN news item.
No.
Well, there is one other news item we need to tell the people about, Nick, and it's something we haven't updated anybody on in weeks because, frankly, no one is interested. But we're going to do it anyway.
They're still not, by the way. I just want let's not pretend like they became interested.
Right. No, I said are not interested, not we're not interested. But the reason that we're going to do it anyway is because our fantasy football season is almost at an end, and by hook or by crook, through whatever means necessary, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen,
we're walking on air.
This 12, 14 team league, whatever it is we're in, is it's come down to us, to the Hard-Traveling Fanboys. We are playing in the championship, or Tony Chimmel would call it a championship game, this weekend to determine the winner of the Foosball Championship.
Mm-hmm.
I just have to say, Nick, may the best team win. I wish your roster success and health, and I wish my roster to kick their ass.
I wish that all the bad things in life happened to your roster and only your roster.
Well, I've already had to move Aaron Rodgers to the bench on account of I don't trust that he's going to play yet. So I'm keeping an eye on that.
Monitoring the situation.
We'll see how monitoring the situation, or anti-monitoring the situation, as it were, and we'll see how it plays out. We'll be sure to let all of you know next week who wins the Fantasy Football Championship. Will it be the Prestige, or will it be the illustrious Hilton Hulkamaniacs? Only time and the shadow know.
There you go.
And then one other thing that we need to do, Nick, is that I look at my digital Apple Watch here sitting on the ground, and on it, it says that there's a minute.
You ain't got no Apple Watch.
I know, but I don't have a grandfather clock either. And it says that there's a minute on the clock, and that means it's time for the Wrestling Minute. Now, we had a pay-per-view this past weekend. We had Raw and SmackDown this week. Nick, I don't think that you've watched SmackDown at the very least.
I've not watched Raw or SmackDown. So
SmackDown was good, and Raw gave us the momentous announcement, earth-shaking announcement, that we have even more authority figures now.
Yes, we have the McMahon family as a collective authority figure for both shows, which won't lead to them getting overexposed at all, but that's neither here nor there.
And it also includes a lot of Vince talking like this in very hushed tones.
Good stuff. But the pay-per-view was good, I thought. You know, it had its rough points from here and there, but I thought the highs were high enough that it carried it to being a good show, namely both women's title matches and the WWE title match between Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles.
Yes, I agree with that completely, Nick. Took the words out of my mouth. The women's title matches were both excellent. Ronda Rousey continues to perform well beyond her experience. Nia Jax carried her part very well in that match. And then I thought the main event was outstanding with Becky, Charlotte, and Asuka. And Daniel Bryan and AJ tore the house down as we knew they would.
Absolutely.
All right, that's been the Wrestling Minute. A lot of things coming up in January in the world of wrestling, including the Royal Rumble and Wrestle Kingdom. So
yes,
we've got a lot
we haven't even talked about Wrestle Kingdom. We got to figure out what our plans are for that. But
yeah, we got to get that worked out.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, that pretty much wraps up this week's episode. Next week, we are going to have an abbreviated episode of the Hard-Traveling Fanboys, where we hope to be joined by the manager, Todd Weber, to discuss the Aquaman motion picture. I'm going to try my damnedest to get out to see it at some point this weekend in the midst of family stuff. And I know Nick's going to be there on, Thursday night?
Yeah, tomorrow, 24 hours from the time we're recording this podcast.
And so we'll be sure to try and get back here next week and give you our thoughts on that movie. Get ready for Christmas week, New Year's, all that good stuff. But until then, we hope that you have a swimming.
Wait.
What?
Wait just a moment now, Greg. You're trying to sign off here, and you forget the new way we sign off these episodes.
Oh, that's right. Yes, we have a guest in the studio with us now at all times, apparently.
We do.
But yes, we are enjoying Aquaman Month. We are enjoying Aquaman Month, or AQUAMONTH, if you will. Mm-hmm. And we will continue and conclude it next week with our look at James Wan and Jason Momoa's Aquaman.
Absolutely.
So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, Mr. Ross, would you
wait? Now this is interesting, Greg. I don't know if you knew this because I've had him hidden away in the closet over here in the corner. We actually have a very special treat for our listeners this week because you've grown accustomed to Jim Ross serenading us out the door. But when I think of Christmas time, I think of how excited I used to be when I was a kid. When you would wake up Christmas morning and get to open your gifts, that childlike exuberance. And so I thought, why not use the official Place to Be Nation Comics time machine that we keep here in the studios and travel back to the early days of Jim Ross and pluck him out.
Oh, my God.
And bring him to the present day to give us a little musical number. So, folks, for the first time ever, singing one of my favorite Christmas tunes, ladies and gentlemen, take it away, young Jim Ross.
Thank you for having me on. I saw Mother kissing Santa Claus underneath the mistletoe last night. She didn't see me creep down the stairs to have a peep. She thought I was tucked up in my bedroom fast asleep. Then I saw Mother tickle even Santa Claus underneath his beard so snowy white. Oh, what a laugh it would have been if Daddy had only seen Mother fucking Santa Claus last night. He saw Mother fucking kissing Santa Claus. I did. I really did see Mother kissing Santa Claus. I went to the store. I went to the store just like Mother asked me, just like Daddy used to ask me to take them cats in that bag and hammer them. And I'm going to tell my daddy. I'm going to tell him that I seen Mommy tickling Santa Claus underneath his beard so snowy white. I killed those puppies. I did. But Father said it would be a good thing. Oh, what a laugh it would have been. And then I walk in and I seen Daddy, and what if he hadn't seen it? But then what if he saw Mommy kissing Santa Claus last night? Oh, what a laugh it would have been if Daddy had only seen Mother kissing Santa Claus last night.
He would tell her to put on a pair of sweatpants and a sweatshirt, go take a 2-mile jog, and then come back and see him when she was done.
I believe it was quite sudden and painful.
Hard-Traveling Fanboys, 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 Hard-Traveling Fanboys.